Hey everybody, Metal Shop Steve here, another album review, and again today we are going right back to one of my familiar spots. We're going back to Black Lion Records. Just give my usual explanation about Black Lion Records. It is mostly a Swedish melodic death metal or straight death and doom metal kind of record label, which up until I heard my first Meadows End album last year, I was not really into at all. But they have some great stuff on this record label. If you want to go check them out, I'm leaving all the links below. Go check out the label, and you know, you can sign up. You can get all access to all of their albums. You can get merchandise, all that good stuff. So here we go. Black Lion Records. Today we're talking about the band called Mist of Misery. They have a few albums out, but the newest album came out in 2019. It is called Unalterable. And to describe the sound, I'm not going to go through every track here because I'll tell you, first of all, there are 14 tracks on this album, and it clocks in at, I believe, a little bit over 2 hours long. 2 hours, which sounds like a lot, but I'll tell you this before we really get into some of the tracks. Here's the thing about this album. The sound is so, I mean, yes, it has that death and doom kind of sound to it, but it has this underlying beauty. So you're going on this, this haunting, beautiful, dark, tortured journey, and you might at first think, wow, how am I going to get through 2 hours of it? But by the end, you can easily just get lost in this whole landscape of this album because it is so deep, and it just kind of pulls you in and keeps you there. So I guess that's the best way for me to describe this. Vocally, they're almost like far away vocals, vocally, it's like they're trapped in this cage, like a caged animal, trapped, held captive somewhere just far enough away that they can't get out. And they're singing from this place of anguish and kind of tortured despair, almost. Guitars, they're melodic, hidden within kind of this wall of sound, almost wall of sound kind of description when you get into the music, where not in the same way as like Jesus and Mary Chain or some of those shoegaze bands kind of did it just with the wall of sound. This is a little more subtle, and you do have the death metal elements in there. You have the guitar, you have the charging drums and the bass, but there is this melodic beauty hidden, layered in there, and every once in a while it peeks out and you can hear it. All right, so let's talk about some of the songs here. Again, I might mention the song's name, but I don't know if I'm necessarily going to get into each song because there's a lot of similarity in a lot of the different songs on the album here, which is part of the appeal, because honestly, if you're going to sit down and listen to 2 hours worth of music on one disc, there has to be something that kind of pulls you in and binds you and hypnotizes you a little bit, and that's what this does, I think. It starts out with this atmospheric instrumental intro, window into nothingness, and maybe that's kind of what to expect because you're kind of pulled into this almost, it seems like you're the only one there and you're hearing this voice singing this stuff to you. Kind of a good way to describe it, maybe. Halls of Emptiness, the first song, it's got this clean droning intro before the guitars and the screaming kick in. And even those are kind of, like I said, a little bit distant sounding vocally. It's like, it's not completely up in your face like you would expect a band to be singing like this. Screaming, there's a string interlude in this song, and that's something that they do really well throughout here. They mix strings in at times. There's a lot of piano mixed in here, so it's a very well-rounded sound. Heir to Misfortune pops up at number 3 here. Speedy drums, then the echoing kind of lost vocals kick in. There are tempo changes, spoken words kind of in there in this little interlude, and then it's back to the fast. And a lot of these songs are long, which is how the album kind of pops up to that 2 hour listening range. So I'll tell you that right away. A Forest of Disenchantments. Instrumental, ethereal voices. It brings in the guitars and the drums, and then it takes them back out again. And there's a lot of that layering going on where you'll hear things, they'll bring them in, they'll weave them in, and then they'll take them away again. That's how that works. So the next two songs, 5 and 6 on this album, are actually two of my songs. I have 4 songs marked as the ones I really like here the best. The 5th song on the album, Red Snow, is actually a cover. It's a cover by a band I've never heard of, but it's a cover nonetheless. It's got this ethereal sound to open up, and the solo guitar work here is really great. It's one of those little surprises that I told you about here within the album, where you're getting kind of the sound of that album pretty consistent throughout, and then they bring the soloing in. I don't want to say Steve Vai, but there's certainly a very thoughtful tone to the guitar solo here, and that's really what they're bringing in with this song. Vocally, drums. I know it's a cover, and saying that one of my favorite songs on an album is a cover might, I don't know if that's offensive to a band or not, but when you do a great cover, it just means that you've taken that song and made it your own. So all I mean by that is it's a great song. They recorded a great song. The next one up, Desolation, another one of my favorite songs on this album. It's another one, and they do this a lot too. They start out with this clean guitar sound, kind of clean guitar intro, and then it just builds into this frenzy. Frenzy is a great word to describe it. It's just a really solid song. It's one of the more succinct sounding songs on the album, and that's not as drawn out, not as changing up as the other ones, not as variable. So that's that one. Next up, Bleak Autumn. It's another one where they kind of go clean to electric and back again all over the place. A Hollow Promise. That starts out with piano. Another beautiful, just kind of tonal guitar solo to start that song out. There's a slower tempo. There's a piano interlude. So again, you're getting a little bit of a taste of not somebody just hammering you. And the funny thing is that in a lot of these songs, you still hear that drum beat in there, but it's back. It's behind the scenes. It's providing just a little bit of a backbone in there, but it's not hitting you over the head. And you know that I'm not a fan of that type of drumming. You've heard me say it before. I find that kind of drumming kind of distracting, and I feel like bands could do better. But a lot of bands use it, especially a lot of the death metal type of bands use it. And I think this is probably the best I've ever heard it because it's there, but it's in the background. Next up, Embracing Ruin. That's another clean intro. It gets intense. It's got a lot of tempo changes in there. That brings us to the 10th song on the album, another cover, but another one of my favorite songs on the album, Stormblast. This one starts out with thunderclaps. So, it's going to have something a little bit different in there, and it is. The thunder kind of starts it out, and then it just jumps into this devastating speed and brutality, and it's got that, but it's a little melodic too. And that's probably how I like my death metal the best. I like melodic death metal. I like when somebody brings in just that extra layer, that you're not just getting hit over the head with the same thing the whole time. Some people love that. I don't. I like a little bit of the unexpected in there. But that's one of my favorites, Stormblast. Next up, The Dying Light. It is a beautiful instrumental. And this one, it's more of, I mentioned Steve Vai earlier, so we're getting a little bit of love for him. But it's an electric instrumental. So it's not something that's going to put you to sleep. It is kind of soothing, but it's definitely rock. A little bit slower tempo, but really kind of a nice break, and one of maybe my favorite instrumental, my favorite interlude on this whole album. Next up, 12th song is my 4th favorite song on the album, not in order, but just the 4th one of the 4 that I like the best. Within Dark Dreams. This one starts out with piano, and again, maybe something similar to the other songs I really loved. Great guitar solo in here. That guitar is just doing some work that you would not expect from a band like this. The tone is absolutely outstanding. The phrasing, everything behind this guitar is just really perfect in this song. Maybe my favorite song on the album. After that, we kind of bring it to a close. Unalterable, the title track. There's actually kind of a creepy organ intro to this, and it's an epic kind of song. It takes you on a journey. This one goes back and forth, all kinds of different layers. Kind of, if we did a summary, everything you've learned about Mist of Misery so far, all packed into one song, this might be that song. And then finally, we finish off the album with Eternal Bereavement. And this one is another instrumental. It's piano. It almost sounds like Moonlight Sonata if you are a classical music person out there. In fact, I'm not totally sure that this isn't some of that as well. Piano, strings, beauty, and again, it kind of brings you back down, brings you back to the present after you've been lost wandering in this 2-hour-long sea of music and atmosphere. This one kind of brings you back, sets you back down into reality, and lets you kind of step back and take in all of what you've just heard. This is unlike anything else that I've listened to, anything else that I've loved, but there it is, Mist of Misery's album Unalterable on Black Lion Records, and they do have quite a few albums out if you want to go check those out. Again, if you go to Black Lion, it'll point you in the right direction for all this stuff. I'm going to leave all the links below. If you are a fan, please let me know. And that's about it. Got more of them coming. And thanks again for coming by.